Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Jamie, and in today's video I'm going to be going over the books that I read in January. In January I read a total of 5 books, which is pretty good for me, so I am super excited to let you guys know what reading I did this month, and without further ado, we're just gonna hop right into it. So I started the year off by reading a genre that I really don't gravitate towards. And it was a weird choice. It was a very weird choice, but I got this book for Christmas. It's been on my list for a while, and I had seen some hype over on TikTok. So that book is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a crime/thriller novel where you are following 2 fathers who have sons who are gay, and their sons were married to each other, and their sons were recently both murdered in a hate crime. So you're following the fathers as they are trying to piece it together, because the police really is not doing their due diligence or a very good job in piecing together the crime, and they really want to get to the bottom of it and kind of take matters into their own hands, and it kind of goes from there. Well, I think this book really touches on some important topics that I personally haven't read much about before. I feel like it was very interesting in that way to read about what these fathers are going through and how they are grieving. And also I forgot to mention that they were not, well, the one father really was not comfortable with his son's homosexuality. So he's also, while he's grieving the loss of his son, he's also grieving like the chance that he had to make the relationship right with his son, because they really were not on good terms. And yeah, like I said, interesting plot points, important conversations. However, this book is very violent, very graphically violent. I went into this pretty blind. All I really knew was like the baseline, like 2 fathers with gay sons who were married and now they're trying to like avenge their deaths. That's really all that I went into this knowing about, but I almost wish that I had known a little bit more, because if I had known that it was going to be as violent and as graphic on page as it was, I don't think I would have asked for this book for Christmas or picked it up. This was not my cup of tea. This is not a genre that I typically gravitate towards, so take my review with a grain of salt. But with all of that being said, I gave this book 2 stars. It was very quick to get through. I kind of like sped through it, but towards the end I was just kind of skimming because it just got very violent and it wasn't really for me. So that was the first book that I read in January and the first book that I read in 2025. And yeah, happy it's off my TBR. Then I read an entire trilogy this month. I read the Cruel Prince trilogy. So we have The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. The Cruel Prince was on my January TBR, so yay, woo. But then I just got completely sidetracked with my TBR. And I was like, well, I have to continue this series because I was so sucked in by the first book. In this book, if you don't know, which I feel like this is a very like popular book and I was one of the last people on planet Earth to read it. But if you don't know, in this book you're following Jude, and Jude is a human girl who basically gets taken to Fairy, which is the land of the fairy, when she is a child. A fairy comes to her house and murders her parents, and her twin sister Taryn, and their older sister Vivi are all taken to the fairy realm, where they basically just have to live amongst other fairy, and I want to say fae, but they just refer to them as fairy, so I'm just going to say fairy. And you're basically just experiencing fairy through Jude's eyes. This is only through her point of view. Her older sister is part fairy because her older sister's father is the man that kidnapped them. That's not a spoiler, that you find that out very, very early on. But Jude and her twin sister are both human. And it's not easy being a mortal person in the land of fairy, because these aren't like the sexy fae, like think like ACOTAR. It's not that. These are tricky fae. They are mischievous. They're kind of like not aesthetically pleasing. Like they're not very like good looking. Like they have oddly colored skin, like green skin, a long crooked nose, really sharp teeth that like take up like most of their face. Like they are just not attractive, and they are not the romanticized fae that I personally am so used to reading about. So I really liked that aspect of it, and I think that Holly Black did a really great job with all of the descriptions. It was really immersive, and I really felt like I was there. But in this story, you meet Carden, who is kind of like a bully. He goes to like classes with Jude and such, and they just really don't get along. He's very mean, and he is one of the princes of Elfame, which is this land's name. So it's like fairy, but it's also Elfame. He is the prince, and I don't want to say too much, but just know that yes, eventually it becomes enemies to lovers, but in the first book, there's really not much romance, but the first book leaves off on such a cliffhanger that I immediately had to purchase the next book, which doesn't really happen. Like, it hasn't happened to me since I read Akatar, mainly because I have bought series all at once and don't have to do that these days, which is not great either. But The Wicked King was fantastic. I gave The Cruel Prince 3.5 stars. The Wicked King I gave 4 stars, again left off on such a cliffhanger. And then The Queen of Nothing I gave 4 stars, and I really like how the story all wrapped up. I would say this is like a 4-star series for me. I really enjoyed Holly Black's writing. It was so quick and easy to get through. These books are not that long. The last book was barely 300 pages. It was like 306 pages. I think the longest one may have been the first one. Yeah, the first one was the longest, and by longest I mean it's like 360 pages, and the other ones are much shorter than that, but I really recommend this series. I was not expecting it. It is YA, and I think that's part of the reason why it was so easy to read. And knowing that it's YA, when there is romance, there is no spice. I mean, it might be like implied, but it's not on page. So I really enjoyed the series. 4-star series overall. Super happy to have read it this month. And yeah, take the whole series off my TBR, which is fantastic. And then, so in between The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing, when I was waiting for The Queen of Nothing to get delivered, I did have a library hold come in. So this is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I feel like she needs no introduction because this book is so popular and this show is very popular. I think the show came out in 2021. I personally watched the show before I read the book, and I'm kind of happy I did because I was just picturing Paul Mescal and Daisy Edgar Jones as the characters in this, and it was lovely. I love them both so much. I just love that show. That show is very near and dear to my heart. But knowing that, I went into this knowing how it was going to end, and the ending still just left me staring at a wall, feeling empty inside. But in this, you are following, why am I blanking on names right now? You're following Connell and Marianne, and they live in Ireland, and you're basically just following them through their like high school years. They call it something different there, like they just call it like school, but it's high school, through university and adulthood. And their relationship is one of those where they're so meant to be, but something just keeps getting in the way. It reminds me very much of if you've seen One Day or read One Day. I didn't read One Day, but I watched One Day. Gives me the same kind of vibes, like really like just two people who are so meant to be together and their souls are so obviously tied to one another, but they just can't make it work for a long period of time. So I don't want to say too much more than that. This book is not happy. It is very real and raw, and these people are very you just can really relate to a lot of what they're going through. And I really like Sally Rooney's writing. I know a lot of people say that they don't love how she doesn't use like quotation marks around dialogue. That really doesn't bother me. I still found it very easy to follow, and yeah. This was just a really solid read. I gave it 4 stars, and I am really happy to have ticked this book off my TBR finally. Those are the 5 books that I read in January. I also tried to start another book that I got from the library, but I got like 15 pages in and I was like, this is not for me. I'm not even gonna talk about it because it's pointless. But yeah, so needless to say, only read 1 book off of my Jan TBR, but I did read an entire trilogy, so I'm giving myself some slack. and I'm really excited for what February is going to bring. I'm going to be filming my February TBR video, and you guys will be seeing that next, so keep an eye out for that. But thank you guys so much for watching this short and sweet video. I hope you're all doing really well, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!